This evening, we're going to forego the reports, delay the reports for a moment, and jump right into the dogs. I'm sorry. We're going to jump right into the dogs, the discussion of the dogs. Is that correct, Tammy? Would that be the right thing?
I believe so, yes, since I gather probably most of the people in the audience are here for that topic.
Okay.
I'll just first start a comment. At last meeting, we had discussed drafting a resolution regarding dogs and specifically leash-related rules regarding some of our parks to be consistent with other regional laws and ordinances and townships. And with that, Mr. Santillo, I believe I just wanted to introduce his draft.
Thank you. In accordance with our last meeting, the board articulated a desire to make sure that the leash regulations for dogs in parks where it is required be consistent with other surrounding municipalities. This was not, there was a discussion about whether we should adjust whether certain parks would be moving from a dog to no dog category or vice versa. That was decided to not be part of this current sort of proposal. So sort of in accordance with the instructions of the board, I drafted, which I think has been circulated, a proposed resolution which would amend, that we would have to be sent up to the Board of Commissioners, which would recommend that there be amendments to certain codes in the township's ordinances. Specifically, the goals of this were to identify parks which have always been non-dog parks, identify parks that have always been dog open parks, and specify what it meant to be under control, which was left open and vague in the current existing of ordinances. Consistent with, at least I attempted to be consistent with the discussion of the last panel, and with the assistance of Bill Remfrey and Tammy, I've submitted or circulated a draft resolution that does what I hope is those things. The only thing important with this resolution, this is in no way affecting the current regulations regarding which parks are open to dogs, which parks are not open to dogs, or when dogs are to be on leash at Skunk Hollow. This is not in the resolution. It is not to be adjusted by this. We are under instruction by the Board of Commissioners to not review the Skunk Hollow issue and the leash versus non-leash time frame until at least February, and so this is not part of it. The only thing that this resolution addresses in Skunk Hollow is when it says the times when a dog is to be on a leash, it just specifies that the leash needs to be a physical leash no longer than 6 feet in length, which would be consistent with other surrounding municipalities and would be consistent with the leash requirements at other parks within the township. It's just to provide more clarification and then maybe in hopes that it would also reduce some of the instances that I know we've been getting complaints about. Again, it does not move any of the parks from a non-dog to dog category, and also just sort of would codify what's always been available up on the Park and Recreation's website as to which parks are sort of dog open versus those that are not. So, with that, I circulate and hope it sort of meets the desires of the board, and happy to sort of answer any questions with it. But again, the purpose of this was to clarify what was meant to be under control and make it consistent with surrounding municipalities. I understood I was, but I'm happy. I just left. I mean, was there a particular question that you have? If you want to come up and ask me, I thought I. Okay. 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 I mean, we have a draft resolution here to define what it means to be on a leash. That's the big summary. The leash is, the proposal is that a leash would be no longer than 6 feet in length and a physical leash. So it does not affect the time, the amount of time at Skunk Hollow when any dogs are to be on a leash or not. That's not before the board until February. It also doesn't affect which parks are dogs friendly or dog open versus those that are not. None of those issues are before. It's just to clarify what it means to be on a leash and make those leash requirements consistent with other municipalities. So is there anything, any other questions, or not questions, but I guess for the board? Okay.
We will-
No, Bill, I don't know. Go ahead.
Yes, two things. Number one, you you might want to mention about the fact these are recommendations only, and that the Board of Commissioners has instructed us not to bring this before February to their attention. Is that my?
That's strictly for Skunk Hollow. Skunk Hollow
Oh.
issue, the Skunk Hollow issue and the leash versus non-leash time and schedule, we recommended that the Board of Commissioners that we not review it for 2 years. They came back and said, no, they wanted a review after 1 year. So under that charge, we will not, it's not due to be in front of us again until February.
And I assume, and I don't know this if everybody is totally aware, that this board is here to do recommendations to the commissioners only, and that these resolutions, or their draft of the resolutions, are strictly a starting point for that recommendation. Is that correct?
Yeah, I mean, we only make recommendations to the
Yeah.
Board of Commissioners. They are the ones who have the ability to amend the ordinances, not us.
Okay.
At this time, we want to open up for comments from the floor.
Actually,
Would you come to the podium, please? And we ask that you keep it at least 5 minutes. And
take
could
off.
you state your name?
Bill Clark, what's the issue around control? You were breaking in and out of the,
It's not well defined.
yeah, I know, but what's the next steps via, is there initiative to define it further?
Yes, and that's what is in this recommendation.
That's this recommendation?
Yes, that's
Okay.
what this recommendation is, and it would be a physical leash no longer than 6 feet in length,
Okay.
to make it consistent with surrounding municipalities.
What?
You just come up to the front.
Yeah, just,
Just
Open
one
up for-
really quick thing for the speakers, and you can go ahead and go up. I just want to make sure that you state your name, where you live, address, all of that, just so we have that information that goes on record. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Teresa Buckle. I live at 107 Garrett Ave in Bryn Mawr. I just had a question. I've reviewed some of the meetings that you discussed Skunk Hollow. Have any of you been to Skunk Hollow?
Yes.
Okay.
yes, many times.
Okay. And do any of you have dogs? Like, have you like experienced it? I'm curious what your experience is, because I would invite you to walk with me and my dog, because I personally have not experienced a single incident. So I'm just concerned about the validity of these complaints personally, and I've been going there for 5 years. And then I also recently heard about the Emerald Tunnel, and I live on that block. So I'm also kind of just concerned about where all these complaints are coming from, because I personally have not witnessed, and again, for 5 years. So I am a more recent resident, I guess, in those terms. But I also just don't feel like I have a lot of transparency about what these incidents are, because I haven't experienced not even one in 5 years. So I guess my final thought is, would any of you like to take me up and walking with me through the park with my dog, just so I can get more of an understanding of what you're seeing that's so problematic?
I would have no reservations walking. I walk there all the time,
Great.
so.
Well, Clark, if you don't mind, I can share my information with Tammy, and I would love to have more of an intimate conversation, just to get more of a background on what these issues are.
Sure, I know those trails pretty well.
Great, thanks.
Hi. My name is Charlie Lichtenwalner. I live at 25 Matlack Lane in Radnor Township. I appreciate that you're having an open forum to discuss this. I reviewed the video from the previous meeting, and I had some concerns about some of the issues that I saw raised. I don't know if it's appropriate to ask about them. I heard an issue about legal liability with dogs biting people. Interesting risk. I'm curious if there have been any lawsuits at all about Radnor, or against Radnor, for pet violations. I think, Mr. Orr, it was you that brought this up. You said you were putting your lawyer hat on. Oh. Because I understand that's a high risk.
My lawyer hat is not very good, but I think I might have been, I have a dog that was bit, not on the park or anything else, so
Right.
that, I think I might have questioned, is there any liability? And I don't know. I mean, that's,
I understand. It would be a high risk, low probability, probably, correct?
absolutely.
I'm wondering if there's ever been a lawsuit in Radnor over a pet issue, number one. And I'm also wondering, would that really fall on Radnor or the owner of the dog?
You're way above my pay grade.
No, I'm not. I'm an IT director.
No, I mean, I have no idea.
Because I think we should deal with what's real, right? Not made up
Well,
stuff.
And that, I probably was speaking offhand and.
Right, but you cited it as evidence towards the argument of restricting dogs. That concerns me.
Oh,
Because
okay.
as a taxpayer, my children and my family derive tremendous benefit. It's not about my dog's health, it's about my family. My children are very upset about the possibility of not being able to walk with their dogs in the Willows. We've lived here for 18 years, and this has been very important to us. This is a taxpayer issue. This is not just a dog well-being issue. So I just would like to raise that, please.
Yeah, I recognize that, and I think that's a cause, you know, for concern, and I think that maybe I presented something that maybe wasn't really important, if that's the way to
Thank you.
put that.
That's fair. No, and I appreciate that very much. Thank you. Also, thinking about this, I know that there's been a lot of complaints. I've heard, I believe, ma'am, it was you, Ms. Cohen, who suggested you get a lot of frequent complaints every week in email, et cetera. Is that correct?
I've gotten several in the last few years that we've been
Yeah.
discussing this. And
That's
we've
a bad
also
thing,
had,
isn't it?
excuse me?
That's not good that you're getting complaints.
We've gotten both sides, and I've presented that we've had both sides. We have a lot of positives. We have people who have great experiences. We've also gotten information from people where they don't have great experiences.
Right.
We also prepared more information for the commissioners when the topic went to the commissioners for the ordinance 2024, the Skunk Hollow Trail development for the commissioners that outlined to them the nature of the incidents that we have received, not only those that are on file with the police department, but those as well within our department.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. I'd be concerned about that too. I'm curious, when you receive an email complaint and someone's unhappy about it, because there could be a shrill minority here, how do you vet that complaint?
I direct them to the police department to file an incident report if they have a significant issue that's occurred. Otherwise, I call them or I email them, as I've had conversations with many people, I'm sure, sitting in this room.
Right.
Numerous emails going back and forth, discussing situations. We encourage people, if they have an adverse situation, to make a police report on it,
Right.
especially if there's an incident where their dog may have gotten bitten or they got bitten.
Right.
It's not always the frequency. Sometimes there's just an intimidation factor that happens where people just want to report the information and at least have
Exactly.
their voice be heard.
But that's subjectively relative, right? If I make a complaint to you and you hear my side of it, how do you know that what I'm telling you is true?
Sure, well, I mean, but my job is to hear the information and take the phone call and take every resident seriously, no matter what it is that they report to our department, whether it has to do with dogs or it has to do with some other topic. I mean, that's what my job is
right?
to
No,
do.
I get it.
So that's why if there is a significant incident, I direct them to the police department so that
Right.
they can do an investigation and actually determine if there's severity, or try and get the other parties that were involved in the incident to try to understand exactly what occurred.
Totally fair, totally appropriate. Here's my concern. You presented that as evidence at the last meeting of a burgeoning problem, and I'm questioning the underpinnings of your logic with it.
I'm giving the information that I've been asked to provide,
Right,
not
but you're
only to the
vetting it.
board,
You're not vetting it. You're
but
just
to the
taking it as
commissioners.
verbatim, right?
Exactly, but people are putting something in writing, it's shared and forwarded to the board, so they have the information.
Right, but my point is, I could make 15 complaints over 2 weeks, and they'd all, under this model, be taken as legitimate, right?
Shouldn't every resident be taken seriously if they have a complaint?
Yeah, but you don't know if it's true or false.
You're exactly right. I don't know of anything that
It
people,
can't necessarily be evidence towards restricting this ability because it's unvetted.
I don't think it's being looked at that way, and I don't want to speak on behalf of the board because I
Okay.
know they've heard a lot of commentary over the last 4 years on this topic,
Right.
whether it's been vetted through email or it's been vetted here during public comment. So, but I mean, as stewards to what they're trying to achieve, I think they're trying to listen to every citizen and make
As
an
they
informed judgment on what they're trying to pass on to the commissioners.
I politely suggest you got 1 minute left,
I'm
sir.
sorry, okay, yeah, I'm going to run out of time. I think that's it. I just would ask, please, that Dr. Pyatt, really, a duck?
Didn't you know it's dogs,
A
not
duck?
ducks? Come on.
It could have had a woof, I guess.
Dr. Pyatt's one of the best doctors in the township. He's been fabulous to my family and my children. I just want to point that out. Anyway, thank you. I'm sorry. I don't want to, I realize, I don't mean to come out as fractious. I don't. That's not my intention. I have children. My family really loves this wonderful benefit of this beautiful park. And I would just close with this comment. I also understand the township's trying to protect the venue. It's important. I know the venue is having events. I know there have been issues. I understand the value. I've been going to the Willows since 1970. I used to ice skate there with my father. So I would just ask, please, that you really think about it from both angles. It's not about dogs. It's about families, family time. My kids are going back to college. We're recent empty nesters. We took a walk in the Willows. It was the one thing we had. Please don't take it away.
Just one point of
yeah.
clarification also, the Willows does prohibit dogs. And that has been a standing,
I'm talking about the trail.
okay, all right, just
Okay? And that's what
understood.
you're talking about restricting, correct?
No, we're not this evening, and I think
no.
Mr.
Okay, good.
Santillo clarified
No,
that.
look, there's, and I apologize if my mic, if I wasn't speaking into the microphone. There is nothing in this proposed resolution that moves anything from a park of prohibiting dogs to now allowing it, or allowing dogs to prohibiting it. It is not in any way changing the current timeframes when dogs are supposed to be on leash at Skunk Hollow and when they are not. That is not before the board.
Oh, good.
It's not allowed to be before the board prior to February.
Okay.
And I don't want to speak for the rest of the board, but personally, I don't think if this resolution were passed, and if the commissioners were to adopt it and require the leash be 6 feet and 6 foot in length and physical in nature, I don't think we could truly do an analysis of whether the hours should be adjusted at Skunk Hollow until we see how that plays out. But I'm talking about down the head. I want to be very clear because I got a sense from the emails that were forwarded to us. People think we're coming after the parks and trying to get rid of the dogs. That's not it at all. All we're doing is trying to clarify, because one thing we're hearing, and one of the things I think is a real concern in some of the correspondence that Tammy's getting is lack of clarification.
Okay.
And I know Tammy, she refers people to the website all the time. And and I got to tell you, it's a good website, but it's not as clear as having the commissioner sort of bless it and make it clear. One of the things we want to do is we think some of these complaints that we may be getting, I know you raised the concerns about whether.
Shrill minority.
Either shrill minority or anything else.
Right.
But let's just assume for purposes of our discussion here, everyone's valid, everyone's real, okay?
Okay.
If there is clear lines drawn, we're hopeful that there may be less complaints because of that.
Agreed.
So these are things we're trying to get. And I want to, and again, I don't want to speak for the rest of the board, but I can tell you, having been on this board for over 12 years, I think, at this point, it's our goal to try to make it as fair as possible and and make as many people as few people, how should I say, everybody equally unhappy as possible, I guess, okay? That's the
understand.
goal. We're trying to thread that needle here. So please know we're hearing the emails, we're getting them, and our hope is that if things are more clear, there will be less maybe conflicts or
Right.
incidents. That's the goal. But we do not want to change at this time anything that has to do with the hours in Skunk Hollow or what parks are dog open versus what dogs are dog closed. So thank you.
Wonderful. Well, thank you very much. I'll sit down, and I just would love to reiterate that I love the township, and this is a huge benefit to my family. Just within the hours, following the rules, we really appreciate what we have, and I really hope not to lose it. Thank you.
Just before you speak, I would just politely suggest, throw out there, it's a 5-minute time limit, and so that everybody could be heard. I wish we would abide by that rule. Thank you.
And maybe get home
That's
for the
okay.
Eagles
No
game.
problem. I realize everybody's passionate about this. Trust me, I do. But, you know, we want to get everybody heard. Thank you.
Hi, good evening. My name is Kim Cruz. I'm on Garrett Avenue. Howard, you know I hate public speaking, so I will be as brief as possible. I checked the email that got sent out from the township, and I just checked the website. That resolution's not on there, so I was wondering if you could actually read it to us, and so we can figure out who it applies to. And also, I was part of the group that fought to have our dogs be able to be running around Emlyn Tennell Field when it was allowed. Oh, gosh, okay, I'm going to go like at least 20 years ago, because AJ's 24. So I just want to make sure that we still would be allowed to have our dogs running around Emlyn Tennell Field off leash, because that's very important to us. It is our neighborhood park. It's right across the street from my house, and I exercise my dog there every day off leash. Thank you.
I would be happy to read it. I just wonder if, and it's true, it was, the drafting of this wasn't completed until earlier this week, so this isn't an effort. It may be a better practice to allow this to be posted and commented on in the December meeting.
Is it possible to project it for our audience and those viewing outside? Is it possible to project this?
I'm sorry, can you say that
Is
again?
it possible to project this
Sure,
for
absolutely.
the audience and those watching from afar? I would say that it's critical for public discussion with this, and this is
Ian,
the
if you
first.
can project this
is-
item, I'm going to put up.
This is the first iteration that it's seen, even for the board itself. So I would suggest, you know, this is a meeting for public comment, and again, just respecting, we understand the importance of dog ownership and off-leash in parts of our township, but this is just again an attempt to try to make a approach to match other surrounding townships and have a standard by which our police and others can have a way to approach this. So if we can get this on the screen so you can see the resolution, but I think I would propose we would have a vote on this in the next meeting.
In December, I don't
Yeah.
think it's not something I think the board should be voting on until we have full public participation and review.
And just to reiterate, I know it's come up many times, this is not about the Skunk Hollow Park at this point, although it's worded in this draft. It is not going to change, at least the previously rules were put in place by the township about that park before. This is just about other parks and making a standard similar to that of townships around us.
In section D at the bottom, is that the Willows Park where you're saying dogs are prohibited from being in that park?
Section D, no, section D, if you look at section C is Skunk Hollow Park and Trails.
Oh, I'm sorry, thank you.
Section D is strictly to the Willows Mansion and the surrounding land there. The only change within the Skunk Hollow, just for everybody's knowledge, is section C. That basically goes word for word as to what the Board of Commissioners approved last year, the only change being the, when it says leash is no longer than 6 feet in length, and then also just adds the requirement that dog owners are responsible at all times for disposing of any waste, which I know many dog owners already take responsibility for, but again, the hope is to make this clear so that there could be less, I don't want to use the word conflicts, but incidents.
Hi, Bill Clark, Hillside Circle, Villanova. I'm a little confused of the, I'm not a lawyer, I'm a little confused the wording of this versus the wording of the signage. To my knowledge, the current signage, and I assume the ordinances follow that, are the dogs should be under control at all times, but under leash at Skunk Hollow, which I'm familiar with, but under leash on weekends and holidays. To go to this wording, which says under control, is to mean on leash, implies that if it's not one of those stated times, your dogs don't have to be under control, which seems not like what you want to say. You follow what I'm getting at? If the only times that the dogs have to be under control is when they're leashed,
I see what you're saying.
then what happens on weekdays? They don't have to be under control?
Fair enough. That's a good analogy.
Because I think we as dog owners know that we are responsible for our pets, and we are, and it's a nebulous concept of whether having your dog be trained to be at your heel versus be callable to return from the woods and all things else. But we certainly know that you're responsible, you should be responsible to keep your dog from engaging in aggressive behavior should another dog or person show up and that situation deteriorate. Under control to us usually means you're carrying a leash with you, even if the dog is not on the leash, and if the dog misbehaves or there's too many dogs, there's a gang showing up, that you are in a position to leash the dog to control its aggression in the moment, even on a weekday. So we believe that we should be able to control our dogs at all times.
No,
But they should only be leashed on the times that are specified.
that's a good suggestion and something I
All right,
didn't.
so I
didn't
just
think
want to, ipso facto, if the dog is on the leash, it's under control. So the only time it's nebulous is when the dog is not on a leash. But we're still responsible for that. So that's it.
Okay.
Good evening. Thank you for your serious concerns of these matters. I'm Roberta Winters, and I live on Williams Road in Rosemont, and I am concerned, as you are, with the dogs in our township, and I think you're making some considerable improvements. One of the issues I have specifically is with Clem McCrone Park. I know the dogs are prohibited from being there, but I can probably, since I walk the neighborhood frequently, I would say I rarely go in that area without seeing people with dogs in the park. Sometimes they're on leash, sometimes they're not. Sometimes they clean up after the dogs, sometimes they do not. It's very difficult to say anything as a citizen to dog owners because I know people love their dogs. I know they mean a lot. I know they provide therapy. I know all these things. I've also taught school for many years in Radnor, and I know we have children who are allergic to dogs. I have an older student that I work with at the high school who, when the therapy dog comes into the school, has to get into an isolated area because it petrifies her. So there are all kinds of reactions people have to dogs. I find it difficult as an elementary teacher who always taught my kids to follow the rules, that we have signs in the parks that say dogs are prohibitive, and people just continue to disobey that rule. I feel also that our police people are very, I don't mean to say overburdened, but I hate to call 911 every time I see a dog in the park where it shouldn't be. I've also been told by dog owners that should have better things to do with my time when I see a dog running wild and playing ball in the middle of the baseball field at Clemacrone Park. So one of the things that Tammy did for me, because I'm sure she has a list of my concerns that I've shared with her, is that she provided a card that I can give to dog owners that I see that tell people where the dogs' parks are available in Radnor Township. So if they are at Clemacrone, they can walk a block and a half and go to Emlyn Tennell Field and walk their dog with ease. I know we are in the most densely populated spot in Radnor Township. I know many people live in twins and small apartments there where we don't have a lot of space for people to walk their dogs. We do have sidewalks, however, and we do have places within our township that you've provided for us for people who have and care for their dogs and try to keep them under control and follow the rules, do the right thing. I'm just concerned as a resident for people who don't do the right thing and don't follow the rules and leave us somewhat at risk. Thank you.
Sorry, Howard, I came back. Kim Cruz, thank you for posting the ordinance, it's very helpful. My comment, 2 comments. One, I love the 6-foot leash because I hate those retractable leashes because I've been, we'll say, annoyed as people who don't know how to use them. And so their dogs go 12 feet away from them, and you can't tell me your dog's under control that way. But I would ask that Emlyn Tennell be moved over to Section B, because we do run our dogs there. It is our neighborhood park. And so it would be, I'm not, to say that I'm gonna get, a fine for running my dog in the park that's across the street, well, then I'm gonna start calling the police on everything that goes on in that park. I mean, it's not, that's a nasty thing to say. Apologize for that. But I would just request that you move Emlyn Tennell over to B so that it is a park where we can take our dogs unleashed. Thank you.
If I could just ask for a point before the gentleman who spoke about Section C, I just wanted to get sort of a sense from the room. If the language was added that all dogs were to be under control at all times, would that, is that something that would get some kind of a backlash as we sort of navigate this draft? I understand. This is what I'm trying to get at. This is what I'm trying to solve. I mean, under control is the language that's currently in the ordinance, which obviously I don't think is sufficient enough. So that's the thing we're trying to balance here. So sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt your point.
No worries. My name's Maureen McGrath. I live on Beech Tree Lane in North Wayne. Thank you all for your attention to this matter. I just want to clarify, so to be ultra clear, we're newer residents. The parks in Category A, they are subject to the under control specification, and that's what's being targeted by this resolution, correct? To clarify it to the 6-foot leash, right? The current standard is under control.
I believe that all dogs have to be under control. It's not specific as to what that means, which is what we're trying to rectify. There is no place in the code that outlines the specific parks in which this applies to. It's sort of not a hodgepodge, but we'd have to direct someone to the website, so we're trying to make that clear.
Okay, thank you for clarifying. And so I feel kind of guilty as a new resident that I have been doing this without verifying the legality. I really have been following the cultural norms of our neighborhood. But my local park is North Wayne Park, and I might be producing what will be a pile-on from Kim's request that I would like to see that move to Category B as well. North Wayne Park, in my experience, is a leash-free park, so many dog owners, especially families with children, use that park to exercise their dogs. It's an enormous amenity for the neighborhood. Many of our neighbors do have dogs, and as a dog owner, something that I just want to make, or that I'd like to propose to you is how efficiently a family can exercise a dog when there is no leash. So in a leash-free park, a walk that would take 15 minutes can exercise a dog as efficiently as a walk that might take an hour. And where I think this can really place an undue burden on families when dogs aren't able to be exercised as efficiently are families with young children or families who have family members with mobility issues, the elderly. So long as a dog is under control, and granted, in my limited experience in this neighborhood, I have not experienced any out-of-control dogs in these parks, but my sample size is small. I just would like you to consider that. I think the outcome, realistically, is going to be a lot of dogs who aren't receiving the attention or exercise that they need simply because families have pretty stacked schedules. And so if you've got 45 minutes to take the family to the park and the dog's on the leash, the outcome is just going to be that dog doesn't get as efficient of exercise. So it's just something that I wanted to present. It's a really fantastic amenity for our neighborhood. We've enjoyed it so much, and so do our neighbors. And something that I'd also like to add is many of our neighbors with small children will bring their dogs and children to the park to run free together. It's just really charming, and it's a beautiful amenity. And I don't want to pile on with this long list of parks that people are going to want to move to Section B, but I just wanted to state the value there. So thank you so much.
Me again. Same as before. To your question of what can under control mean if it doesn't mean under leash, I think you could word it to some degree like what being under control and not leashed means is that your dog should be recallable, and you should be in a position to de-escalate any potential dog-on-dog or dog-on-person conflicts, perhaps by having a leash on your person ready to be engaged should such conflict occur. Right. That's what kind of we believe under control means, is that when dogs start getting aggressive, we, the owner, can intervene and get the dogs separated. Personally, I don't think it's usually enough, especially for a big dog, to just reach out and grab the collar. Okay. I've seen most success with people who are carrying a leash. They usually carry a leash around, and if their dog is getting aggressive, they throw the dog on the leash until they're somewhat down the trail, and they release him again. Okay, so I think you have a challenge to define what under control means, but you got to keep it separate from the B and C, which means leashed.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Okay. I had two other comments. I think I still got time. One, the gentleman that made a comment about all these emotional complaints that are being made, I think it would be helpful if we got feedback via you or whatever from the police department of how many of the cases of complaints resulted in a risen to the level of a police complaint that was found by the police department to have merit, as opposed to just people are calling and saying. Now, if you know, that seems a much more substantial burden to say that's evidentiary, rather than just saying we get a lot of emails. But if you came in and said, listen, in the last 6 months at Skunk Hollow or Hartford, we had 17 police filed with the police department that were investigated and found, well, that's pretty substantial. But if it's just 17 emails you got, it's not as substantial.
We differentiated that information for the Board of Commissioners when it was passed on to them, so they received information. So
Okay,
when they
would it be
evaluated,
helpful-
they did have that. I realize that, but that's up to the Board of Commissioners to tell us what they want us to further disseminate to the public.
Okay.
But that information was provided to them. I believe it was a document within their packets when they evaluated Ordinance 2024 at Skunk Hollow. So they have the same challenge, though. So if somebody comes in and makes a police incident report, a lot of times, if there was any type of a situation that had occurred between multiple parties, sometimes there's only the viewpoint of one or two parties. So they don't always get the full picture of what happened as well. It's very subjective. So
not
you know,
unlike
they
a
sit
traffic
with someone, right? And they
You
sit
make
with
a complaint
someone.
about a traffic incident, which is illegal, and the parties aren't identified, you still have the same kind of problem.
Right, so they take the information down. A lot of times it's being written up by the individuals, and then it's transferred obviously into the police report, and then it just becomes a report that's on file that's subjective. So it would only be that then if it was pursued to some degree by a dog owner for some sort of a litigation purpose, that there would be more detail carried out, obviously, in a legal matter. And I know the question was raised earlier in the meeting, how many of those have actually occurred? It's definitely something that I would have to go back and look further into. You know, a lot of times once the police reports are made, like, you know, I receive a document, review it, then I have sort of, you know, information privy to what went on in the park, but then I don't really learn thereafter what occurs unless it's something substantial. The only thing I would say is in my 26 years of being here, I can't imagine it's more than a handful that may have been pursued to some level of litigation, that may have been settled
And
outside
I think
of
that
our
one
realm.
of the things the community, and then we've had, you know, a lot of people emotionally involved with this, sometimes feel that the qualitative quantity of complaints is being used to curtail the freedoms of the dog access, and it's just a sore subject.
I mean, I can tell you as a board member here, it's not perfect evidence, okay?
Right,
This isn't a court of law, but we're trying, you know, and on the flip side of that, as I know someone who just spoke earlier, there is hesitation to call the police
Right.
to do those things. So
Although the police have been called a number of
I know,
occasions. I've been
I'm
there
just-
when they,
it's
you know,
not perfect
it's not perfect either way.
Either way, it's not perfect. I think, I don't want to speak for the rest of the board. I can tell you, I personally appreciate that, and just know that this is some of the things we're trying to navigate as we make these recommendations to the Board of Commissioners. No matter what we recommend, it doesn't go into effect unless the Board of
Yeah,
Commissioners.
I got the protocol.
Yeah. So-
Thank you, sir.
Okay.
I actually have a comment that's appropriate just before we reconvene in December on this issue. There's an important partner in the police with this. I would like their input in terms of the enforceability of this and any concerns they have before we make any.
Whatever I think would help. I mean, we know there's been difficulty in enforcement no matter what we would do here.
I know we had received a letter from the police about their concerns about enforceability of the vagueness of the previous rules. So I would look, if Tammy, you could ask them to weigh in on this draft.
Sure, absolutely. They know that we're reviewing this tonight.
Okay.
They know it's coming their way, as well as the township manager, who I know has conversations regularly with the commissioners. But just to also confirm the nature of the letter that Superintendent Flanagan had provided at our last meeting was just more of a recommendation to say, like, all or nothing within a park, whether it's, you know, on leash, off leash, whatever it is, versus having very specific areas within a park, such as dogs are allowed, you know, on a field but not in a playground. That makes it harder for them to enforce when there's multiple rules at one site. So they look at it as park-wide. So if there is a policy regarding that park, that makes it enforceable for them if it's park-wide versus to very specific areas within the park. In addition, just for additional clarification, I know that it was emphasized, but being able to put something in the code book that's an ordinance gives them the ability to better enforce, so that there isn't a policy that's just sitting out on the website or something that is in, you know, one of our park, you know, information sections, or, you know, like we have park policies, things like that, that, you know, aren't necessarily an ordinance that has been passed by the commissioners. So for them, it's giving that consolidation, so sort of a one spot to be able to retrieve all the information and make it easier for the officers to understand, you know, what the policies are regarding each park. And then it also makes it better for the citizens as well. Because as I think Andy, you had mentioned, we have information sort of all over the place right now, and this is bringing it all together. And this is just a draft, too. I know we're
Certainly.
going to talk about it
And again,
next
it's just
month as
seeking
well.
clarity. The second point is our commissioner, and just looking to the opinion of commissioners in terms of whether or not you looked at us as a draft to make some of the decisions about these parks that are within column A or column D, or it's something you'd like input in the next week to give us some guidance whether it should stay the same.
No, I think what you guys are doing is good. I'm just one commissioner out of 7. I just looked it up again. Pennsylvania dog law, all dogs must be under control, right? Under control, and must not be allowed to run at large. So as a commissioner, like, I see that, this thing has to also do that.
Match the state law.
Yeah.
Yeah, but also mirroring, we have so many different local laws, from state park law to surrounding townships, the city of Philadelphia, other major metropolitan areas with things we mimic. We're not writing this. So it's basically mimicking what is standard code elsewhere.
Yeah,
So,
and I talked to somebody about, who knows our township, but he's from another township, and he said in Downingtown, they have a large area for dogs. It's fenced in, they also have like water section, other section, but the dogs are at a spot that's all controlled, and they can run free.
yeah,
But
I
it's its
think
own
as we
spot.
discussed before, we recognize the need to have areas where dogs can be off leash and to have time with their families. But at the same time, we need to define those areas.
Yeah, and
Specifically.
And at the same time, he said, you will not, a mother and her father and their little kids will not just walk through there. It's
You
for
you
the
know when
dogs.
you're in that space what you're getting into. I
Right.
think that's what is the hope, you know?
And again, I think, Commissioner, you bring up Pennsylvania law, which would apply here regardless of the township that we're in. The thing that, to edit this accordingly would, I think, under what you just read, and not having looked at it, would cut into what the commissioners just passed last year in terms of Skunk Hollow, about leash versus non-leash times, which this is specifically sought to avoid.
Yeah, and that's still under review.
Right, that's an issue that we have to look at in February or
Yeah.
this
And
spring.
And I've gone to Skunk Hollow, Emlyn Tunnel, for a long time, 50 plus. And when I go there, we have a golden retriever. When I go there, I pick up after my dog, and I pick up 5 or 7 other bags from somebody else
Right.
who left stuff there, which is a shame. I'm not saying it's Radnor residents doing it, because there's other residents or other people come to that park as well. We had signs up that the signs got stolen.
Right.
I saw somebody go into the park, they parked in the willows, dog got out, ran around, there's kids and cars moving in the park. They finally got to the trailhead to go in, read the sign that it needs a leash on that certain time, put the leash on the dog, let the dog run in by himself. So we're kind of dealing with ups and downs. Did I report that to the police? No, I
Right.
did not. But did happen. I saw it.
Yeah, the reality is, regardless of how strict the police enforce this, the most important thing is that there's responsibility of the owners. I mean, that's goes with it. I know there's a lot of responsible owners here in the room, but there's those outliers, like you said. So, but I'll make some edits to this and recirculate it and make sure it's posted for a review sufficiently in advance of the December meeting.
I have a question. I'm not really sure how to pose it because I'm actually on the board, right? But what's the difference in each of the parks? Like, what's the difference between A and D? The A being the ones that allow dogs to be in the park, and D, the one being the ones that prohibit dogs from being in the park at any time. Like, what's the difference between the parks? Is there a thing?
Other than what's been previously posted on the website and decided over time, I think I defer to Tammy. I know there's been discussion in prior years I've been on the board of whether one park should be in a category or not. I know this came up when there was discussion about inconsistent signage for dogs in the various parks. This, again, it doesn't, and I know there was some requests that certain parks be moved from one category to the next. This just takes what's already on the website as the categories and just puts it into the code. some of these parks are sports fields, which is, I believe, one of the reasons why dogs are not prohibited in there. I know we discussed it at the last meeting. That was a belief that some of that the board sort of expressed that parks with sports fields should not be allowed, dogs should not be allowed in there. So I think that's, I can't speak to every difference here in that. And yeah, that's the major thing. And for every, I'm sure there could be exceptions made for every one of the parks and every one of the different categories here. But I think, whether we want to undertake a review of the parks, whether they should go from one category to the next, was not what I understood that's sort of the desire of the board at this time when I drafted it.
I would say that they're all open for review at any time, particularly when it gets to the level of the commissioners to change that category. But these are the historic rules that have been in place, and not to have a more complicated process, because this is a lot of different parks. It was basically just trying to address a piece, which is the lease issue that brings us in compliance, or at least consistent with other municipalities. So, but there is debate. There's debate that they could change, but I just think that's not our principal focus necessarily, as much as just passing on that any of these could be edited based on the community's wish. So.
Hi, Paula Ball, 417 Woodland Avenue in Wayne. I just had a question about the Skunk Hollow entry into the park. A lot of times on weekends, the gate is locked, and that's a really nice, it's if we really want to follow the rules and leash our dogs from the Willows parking lot up, a lot of people will say, I'm just going to go to Skunk Hollow and walk my dog from there. But sometimes our access is locked off, and I'm not quite sure why that is.
I believe it's locked sometimes when there are contractors back there working, just because a lot of the activity, but I can talk with the Public Works.
It's usually on the weekend.
The
The contractors are there on the weekend?
They sometimes are in and out, so I think for safety purposes, perhaps they do, but I will inquire with the Public Works Director and find out, because my understanding is it's opened all the time.
Yeah, we've definitely encountered it being locked. Right, there's the gate that blocks you from going into like the mulch in that area, but there's the
Right.
gate at the top.
At Darby Paoli Road.
Yeah.
That should be
That's
open all the time.
Often locked on the weekend.
Okay.
So
I
it
will
prohibits
inquire.
us from
My
using
understanding
that.
is it's open all the time.
It's like someone doesn't know they shouldn't lock it.
I agree with you. I think that's a great parking lot.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
hard to get in and out of safely.
Yeah, safety-wise,
That's
but it's
concern,
great for us who,
capacity-wise, it's great, and it gets you right there.
right
So,
to the trail, and we're not having to worry about like, oh, my dog ran over to the willows to sleep it or whatever.
and that upper lot gets crowded too, like in a great day, like you're gonna have it full sometimes, so.
Yeah, well, I'm not there, I'm not there when
Yeah.
my dog has to be on leash, but it's been when it's off-leash time in the morning and it's locked, so
Yeah,
it would be nice to know why.
Yes, I will look into it right away with our Public Works Director and our Park Supervisor, and then if there is a day that they're closing it, like if it's just going to be closed on Saturdays or closed on Sundays, because there's a reason, what we'll do is we'll publish and disseminate that information so folks are aware, which actually was one thing I was going to ask, is if people aren't actually signed up to receive communications from the township on the dogs, I'm going to leave a piece of paper at the back of the room so you can put your email. This way we can distribute information on the gate situation, if there is some particular rule we need to follow, as well as if we're going to circulate the resolution.
Just another point with that, would there be a way to improve the signage there a little bit for that parking lot too? I realize it's got that sign tucked back in, but to let people know that are new, that's where you can park down in there.
We
So,
can evaluate that, yes.
It's just, right now the sign's kind of tucked back, and I think it would just let people know that you can actually gain access to the park there, particularly Skunk Hollow, because if you're in the Sawmill parking lot, it just gets tenuous there with the amount of cars, and it's tight, so. Yeah, you get high volume traffic going up there, and you cross your fingers, it'll stop. So when you're walking across, you have to be careful. So.
I just want to make a comment on this wording. I like basically the 4 classifications, Dogs are allowed anytime, but when only leashed. Dogs are never allowed. Dogs are allowed off leash, anytime, or dogs are allowed off-leash only on certain days, okay? That's pretty simple, we got it. The dog should be under control at all times, my pet peeve, and you're responsible for your dog's waste, are universals. So you don't have to reiterate them in every section. It's like, it's universal to all 4 sections. So,
I don't disagree with you, but from what I'm hearing, there's a lot of bags being left over by other people, so.
you know, I hear you, and as dog owners, we're upset about it as well.
I get it.
It's kind of like, you know, people not obeying the speed limits. Not everybody obeys the speed limits, and it pisses us off if we are the ones obeying the speed limits, but, you know, police can't be everywhere, and they're certainly not going to be in the parks, so.
Right, I hear you.
Hi, I'm Tom Cerrone. I'm on West Beach Tree Lane. I just had a question. So the difference between column A and B, you're saying that you didn't change the, you just changed the wording, you didn't change the categories. But A is going from under control to under control with leash, right? So it's kind of functionally changing a potentially off-leash park to a leash park. Is that right?
No. I believe the code, I'd have to look at it. Again, I believe it just says dogs have to be under control, okay? It doesn't specify which parks have, when dog, in the parks that they're allowed in, they have to be under control. This is the issue we're trying to resolve.
Right, but so I guess I'm just, it feels like between A and B, we're now put like a broad brush of parks that are now on leash in A, right?
It's no different. The dogs had to be on leash, not under the code, but under the website.
Okay, because I think I was just checking the website, and my understanding was always in A that in at least North Wayne Park, where we often go with our dog, was that it was allowed to be off leash. That was always my understanding based on even the website, but that could be wrong, but.
That's correct, just to clarify.
I'm correct.
Yeah, you are correct. I mean, there's nothing that required a leash. So every park that permitted a dog just dictated that you need to have your dog under control without any further definition. And that's where that was the genesis of this whole discussion in 2020.
Yeah, so I think it would just be, I get that you're using the same like park designation, but I think it would be a pity not to do a reanalysis of which parks are between A and B, because like at least in my view, in North Wayne Park, it hasn't, there's a lot of areas that are I only ever see dogs in, right? So it could be that we're kind of painting a broad stroke where we didn't, if there weren't any complaints around a certain park, why are we suddenly making them leashed parks? Maybe we should only be targeting ones that really had complaints towards it.
Okay.
Thanks.
Any other comments at this time, or? If not, we want to move on here. Tammy?
Right, I just want to just sort of, I guess, understand where we're going from here. So we're going to make edits to the resolution. We're going to anticipate, obviously, sharing it with the police department internally. I would believe we would post and disseminate it so that it is public information. Obviously, it'll go on record as part of our minutes. We can add it as a section of our minutes for next month. And then in December, the goal will be to revisit the discussion again, and will there be anticipation of a recommendation? Because if we distribute out to the public, I want them to know if there's a sense of urgency to come again, because this is now going to go to the commissioners. Like, it'll go sometime in January or February, whenever they're available to take it on their agenda, just so that the public understands what the timeline is. Because I know we hear from people, sometimes they can't make it to certain meetings and they want to submit information, just so they have an idea of what the timeline is, or if there will be another public gathering and information session. I imagine we don't have everybody here tonight that probably would want to opine on it.
I mean, personally, I think that's up to the board, you know, in terms of and especially in light of some of the questions that have been brought up about which column which parks are in, whether that's something that the board wants to take on more broadly or remain more narrow with that, so.
I think my own view is to just allow enough public commentary. I know that we would like to move on this issue. I think it's something we should advance and put to a vote at the next meeting after additional public comment, knowing that it is still a work in progress. It could be edited at the commissioner level based on, I think, individual areas, individual parks can make, I think, their own case to commissioners in terms of if they want to change in column, and then it could come back to us later for additional review as well. But I think it's something we should move to at least have a vote on next meeting after public comment.
Very briefly, thank you. Again, Maureen McGrath, Beech Tree Lane. Thank you again for your attention to this matter. I do want to call out one possible externality that we may not be considering, and I felt the need to bring this up simply because I think there may not have been full clarity on the board's part as to the functional effect of, in Section A, transitioning all of these parks from effectively off-leash parks to leash-required parks. And the externality could be that dog owners who are accustomed to exercising their dogs off-leash in Section A parks will very likely move into Section B parks. So a park like Friends of Radnor Trails Park, which maybe at any given time has 4 or 5 dogs running around on a Saturday morning, very well could effectively become a dog park, and that could have a lot of unpleasant consequences for the people that use their park as their primary park to exercise their children, hang out with their family, etc. Sort of these one-off problems like dog waste left behind, etc. Those are all going to be consolidated into those parks. I, for example, not that I leave dog waste behind, but I exercise my dog in North Wayne Park. I would move into Friends of Radnor Trails Park. I'm sure many of my neighbors will do the same. So I just want you to consider that externality when we effectively take off-leash privileges away from maybe 9 or 10 parks in Section A. Thank you.
I think that's a very good point to consider. Just the volume does matter, but again, part of the preview of this board is kind of get public sentiment, but I do look to the commissioners in individual areas. I think it's a good time to be calling them or emailing them with your specific requests for those parks. I think it's open for discussion, but at the same time, we just have to move along some of this, and I think it all can evolve just based on need. Like if there is a predominance of one particular park, that there's enough case and there's enough community sentiment that it should change, then I think we would be in favor of that, or at least I would be. It just, right now we're just trying to move the basic standard of implementing leashes where it's appropriate. So this is the first step. So.
And also, I would believe any kind of amendment to the ordinance would have to be reviewed by the Township Council. And, you know, I'm not an expert on this, but I do not believe that a township could enact an ordinance that would basically sort of violate Pennsylvania law in and of itself. So that would be an overriding concern at all of these parks, is that they adhere to state law. So even if, so we couldn't put something contrary to it into the ordinance and be sort of pointing to it as sort of like a get out of jail free card. But those are all issues for the Township Council, which is a much better position to opine on it than I would be.
Hi, Teresa. I live on, again, Garrett Ave. I had a question when you mentioned about the parks for D. Did you say that they were potentially able to be moved over to dog accessible, even if it's on leash? Is that still, was that a consideration?
That was not the charge when we drafted this.
No.
No, that was not the charge.
Okay,
It was to keep everything in the same column and not put any more restrictions than what we understand are already in existence.
Okay, because just when you were speaking about those being not for dogs because of the field situation, I'm not familiar with all of them, but it kind of made me think about beaches. Like, is it possible that they could be a seasonal availability? Like between November and February, it's accessible, just like how beaches are off limits during peak season, but when they're not in use. So like, I'm not familiar with all these fields, but some of them would be nice, and I've never really considered why they weren't accessible with dogs. So just out of curiosity, if that would be a consideration, like a seasonality, off-peak accessibility.
I think any comment is appropriate. Any kind of thought like this is appropriate to consider. I think we're just narrowed on our focus in terms of our mandate for this, in terms of what we're trying to achieve. But in terms of like community, if there was a general sense for one park and there was a commissioner, for example, that could make a coherent message that our community wanted that, I think it's up for debate. But I think it may be beyond the scope of what we're trying to do with this.
Okay, thank you.
Acutely.
And again, these are always up for review. You know, this is always something that can be, if these are put in place a year later, if the public comes forward, we can always make a recommendation that the code be amended.
And I believe it's likely that the more this is circulated publicly, the more we are going to hear that. I know this week we were hearing from Inverary residents proximate to the Willows. They like to walk through the Willows to get to Skunk Hollow and the trails, so are looking for that permission to be able to do that. Obviously, it's hard to just allow that for a neighborhood, but I expect we'll hear more of things like that, more subjective evaluation as this evolves. And it very well, may be once it's to the Board of Commissioners level, just as it escalates as a topic publicly.
Yeah.
Back to the drawing board or whatever.
I'll make edits and circulate it to the board, and then make sure and get it to Tammy so it's sufficiently posted in advance of the next meeting.
Okay. Are there any other comments from the public? If not, could we? Okay, we're going to go back to approval. I'll give them it. Okay. Yeah, we do.
Start talking about board minutes, we get everybody leaving.
Approval of the minutes from last meeting?
I so move.
We have a motion to approve the minutes. Is it second?
I'll second.
So moved. Approval of the minutes from October. And reports?
Do you want to
Yes,
offer
of
any
course.
further public comment? I don't know if anyone else is here for additional public comment.
Any other comments? None?
Before I start going, I just
Okay.
wanted to make sure. It can be lengthy, but I'll try not to be lengthy. I was going to give a report on, obviously, recreational programming and everything that's been going on. October, as everyone knows, is an extremely busy month for our department, so I wanted to kind of start off by talking about a few different things that have taken place. So along the Skunk Hollow trails, we've been offering something we call the Spooktacular Trail Hunt. We have ranged anywhere from about 60 to 100 preschoolers that come out on the trails. Ironically, what we were just discussing, the same location, as you can see here in some of these pictures. This year was a lot of fun. We had a lot of vendors that joined us. Some of our contractors that engage through our recreational programming, like Soccer Shots, and a few of the others that offer programming, throughout the township for preschoolers. So they actually set up along the trail, so they were actually treat stations along the trail. And it was a whole lot of fun. It was very successful. I believe this is our 4th year of delivering it, so a really exciting event that we've gotten a lot of popularity with every October that folks have really enjoyed. Here's just a few more pictures. Obviously, our police department came out as well. Radnor Memorial Library joins us, Wayne Art Center, etc. We also we have some new programming that we started in August. We've had 7 programs, something we call Little Tykes Go on Hikes. Again, similar location over in the Skunk Hollow Trails, which we always can't emphasize enough is such a unique area that we're trying to enable lots of really great experiences with. We also have evaluated moving this program to some of the different locations that we have throughout the township with trails like Itham Valley as well, but we've had a lot of popularity over at the Skunk Hollow Trails. So we have a program coming up this Saturday. I understand it's sold out, but people can join the wait list. And with the 7 programs that we've ran since August, we've actually had about 80 people that have taken place. So lots of folks are getting out on the trails, learning about nature, learning about habitat through a lot of really fun and exciting themes that they have that are being offered. And our vendor that delivers this is Hiking Hound Adventures, so we've really been able to develop a great partnership with them. We also, I'll talk about it because it's up here on a slide, but I have a few other things I want to pull up of programs that have happened. But Santa's Delivery right now, we're collecting gifts for our pre-registration and pre-drop-off for the delivery that goes on throughout the township. We have 5 motorcades that will go out on Sunday, December 8th, and deliver the pre-registered gifts, obviously, to all the households. We partner with the local fire departments and the police department to be able to deliver this event. This is its 12th year, which is pretty amazing. Last year, we had 743 households that took part, almost 1,800 gifts, so it's really a massive undertaking. It's really a synchronized process from drop-off to delivery, with a lot of gifts coming in. We actually have a whole room in the back here that's dedicated for all the gifts. And one other really important thing to point out as part of it is we do a food drive as well as a toy collection. So we donate toys locally for folks that are in need, as well as pantry items to some of the various charities that we work with in some of the churches. So even if you don't want to participate in Santa's Delivery, if you don't have young children that want to be part of that event, we do encourage folks to drop off. It's really a great time of year, obviously, for giving, and it's something that we continue to carry on as a tradition as part of the program. That's really an important mission. Pickleball is up and running. Folks are moving indoors now at Radnor Activity Center. We have our fall indoor play going on. So if you're interested in getting more information on that, there's a lot of times and days that are available. We also have an upcoming tournament that'll be taking place in December here, the Snowball Smash. We've been offering 3 tournaments a year for the last several years. They've been really popular. As pickleball continues to grow, of course, within the community, it's something I know folks have been really excited about. We've been offering more clinics, more activities, more things for children as well, just due to the growing popularity. I know just this past week I got a couple of inquiries about when we're building more pickleball courts in Radnor Township. So something for future discussion, of course, when it comes to our parks and infrastructure.
Did you say there are clinics for this too?
There are. We can get you signed up. Hold that thought. So we also, as part of our Radnor Champions programs, which obviously are programming for children with developmental differences, we also have a pickleball program that's coming up that'll be taking place again on Saturday. We're looking forward to a lot of success for that and continuing to grow it as part of our Champions programming, which, traditionally we've had the basketball program that has been going on. We've been working with Radnor Aquatics to potentially offer a swimming program coming up, and we're working on a couple of other fitness-related programming in this area that has been very popular. And as always, folks can go out on our website to register. If they go to radnorrecreation.com, we have online registration, which is through an online cloud-based portal where people can sign up and can continually find information on everything coming up, everything that's available now, and things that are coming up on the horizon. So just going back to October, I wanted to bring up a couple of other exciting things that we had. We had our second annual Halloween at Harford Park. This is a costume contest for our four-legged friends, which was another really exciting and well-attended event again this year over at Harford Park, obviously our dog park. And this was our like I said, this was our second year. We had about 60 participants that took part. We had awards for Best in Show in 3 different categories for small, medium, and large dogs. And interestingly, our small dog category was dressed up as a Radnor Fire Department Radnor Fire Department firefighter. So it was really cool. They had a logo mocked up on its helmet and everything. So it was really a whole lot of fun. A lot of folks in the community have come to really enjoy this event. And it's also a great opportunity for us to circulate information. As we know, we have all these great conversations that are taking place with regards to dogs. So we use that as an opportunity to educate people as well on what is going on. So with that, that event's become really successful. We also had our 11th annual Trick or Treat at the Township building, which is an event that we host here during the day as a safe alternative for preschoolers for Trick or Treat. Radnor Memorial Library joins us, a couple of businesses within the community and vendors, Wayne Art Center, again, lots of folks that like to come on board and do lots of different activities for those in the community. So we had the boardroom here set up to do all kinds of different activities like pumpkin painting, games. There was music time, story time, things like that to engage all the young children. So I just wanted to share some of the pictures from that. The staff get dressed up in all the different departments, and all the kids have an opportunity to circulate the building and get lots of treats and trinkets. And it's really a fun time for us to have the building open to the public and be able to have the community come in and engage with all the department staff and representatives. And as you can see, I have to really give accolades to our department staff, specifically Tracy and Natalie, for all the decorations that they had throughout the building. It really looked fun. So it was another great event for us. One that we had on hiatus for a couple of years, actually due to COVID, and then we just didn't bring back because we were doing so much else. But this year we were like, all right, let's take the plunge, let's offer it again. And it ended up being really successful. Folks had a whole lot of fun. So we also had our first owl encounter and night hike. So I guess there's a theme now about Skunk Hollow Park and the trails. We've really been spending a lot of time out there. So this is another great event that we did at night just a couple weekends ago. So this was led by a local environmental group from Gladwin. They came in and we actually utilized the mansion that night, and we had an educational session on owls and their species and habitats that are here around the region. And then the group went out for a night hike, and they actually heard and got a chance to see screech owls. So it was really exciting. It sounds like the owls that are out in the woods of Skunk Hollow are actually, they're, at least in the assessment of the environmental folks that joined us and led the hike, that they seem like they're pretty tame and maybe used to seeing a lot of people and being around a lot of people. So they found it odd that they were just so visible. And we have a couple videos and things like that we had shared out on social media, but you could see the pictures here. There were actually a couple more. So it was really popular. And
the owls are probably concerned they might be put on leash. That's why.
So maybe. So we also, I understand we also had a recent owl sighting here. We also had a bald eagle sighting by a gentleman in the community, Bob Nicholas, who's an avid hiker throughout the town. He saw it actually saw it on Monday, on Veterans Day, of all days, over near Mill Dam. And then we also have a sign of beavers down in Sawmill that I know we received some pictures on to show their girdling of the trees in that area. So there's a lot of great wildlife that aren't, I guess, scared off by the dogs, that are still continuing to thrive all around.
I saw it over by Notre Dame, the bald eagle, on Monday.
Oh. Awesome. This is a great sighting.
There's a nest at Overbrook.
Tammy, just for, I'm amazed by this. Lower Merion and Tredyffrin, which is our closest ones, do they have any type of these programs in the volume that we have? My personal comment is, I am blown away by these, and I think you do a heck of a job, and that's enough of that. But how does it compare to Tredyffrin and Lower Merion?
Well, I know, so Tredyffrin, we have a pretty close relationship with. They don't have a Parks and Recreation department. I think they actually just hired a program coordinator this year for the first time in their history. The person who did some of their programming prior was also an administrative assistant for the Public Works Department. So she kind of doubled as both and did, a lot of their scheduling and, policy development within parks and things like that. So I think they're starting now to endeavor a department, but they just hired a position. So I'm not sure what they have on the horizon. I know Steve Norsini, our township engineer, used to work at Tredyffrin, and I know they always used to kind of look at us as, sort of the guide, for ideas and things like that. So, but I know they have a thriving township with a lot of recreation and a lot of activities, I think, with sports community and civic community, organizations in terms of availability.
Well, I think it's fantastic. That's all I'm going to say.
Lower Merion, on the other hand, I'm not sure. I haven't dove into their their programming lately, but they probably do a lot. They're pretty big township. Just a couple of other updates. One I wanted to update on actually just happened today. We had the installation of the communication boards at Enke Park. So I think maybe a couple of you were on the board back in 2022 when we did this at Clem McCrone. We installed the communication boards for children who are nonverbal to be able to point to certain signs and images to be able to communicate. This was a project that had been brought forward to us that we implemented at McCrone. So at the playground there, we have 3 communication boards. We now have 2 now that were just installed today over at Enke. So it's been a long time coming. We've been working with the sign vendor to get it developed. Some of the images on the sign are actually customized to the particular playground that's there. So it's just a great addition to the playground. So as we move forward with additional playground replacements potentially in the future, this will become a standard for us, and unless there's something else that evolves that we think we need to incorporate, but that will be something that we'll be considering on the horizon. So I was just going to dive into some updates. I know Fenimore Woods was next on the list. Unless you had questions on any of the programming or any specific projects that aren't on the agenda, I can certainly answer those. Otherwise, I was kind of going to dive into the agenda at this point. So Fenimore continues to move as a project. We are still waiting to get the bid package finalized for the stable. So once we have that and we have an opportunity to dive into that and review, we anticipate the stable rehabilitation will be going to bid. In the meantime, we are continuing to work through the design and engineering aspect that we're doing in-house of the parking lots. So that includes the upper parking lot relative to the stable in terms of the pathways that will get you to the stable, as well as the overall updated configuration. There's some stormwater runoff we're going to try and manage there. So this is all design work that we're actually doing in-house that will be bid in addition. And then as I had presented last month, our pavilion was deteriorated, became significant safety hazard. It has since been demoed. We've removed it. Again, another in-house project that we did to try to save money towards the project versus going out to a contractor. Public Works took it down. We leveled the site, so the concrete pad, everything is completely ripped out. So if you were to go over there now, for those of you who may not have been over there, it's all wood chips, and we moved the picnic tables back over there. So in the meantime, I'll be working to procure the new pavilion. When I have an update on details and timeline on all of that, I'll certainly keep you updated on how that's moving. I'm not sure right now at what point before the busy spring rental season we'll actually have it available. We actually hope to anticipate starting the construction soon. So But all pending, of course, the stable rehabilitation and how the costs come in to how that will go. But there is a possibility that we will be under construction by mid 2025. So as you all know, that is a bond-funded project, so that's not anything that's coming out of capital funds at this point, so.
Same footprint, same size?
Yes, in a ballpark, yes.
Stock, one of its both?
It's going to be a prefabricated
Prefab.
unit, so it may not be exactly the same size, depending on the incremental size constrictions and configurations that I'll be within.
New
But it'll be
concrete
roughly the
pad?
same, yes.
And flush to the ground, not that
It'll
big?
be, yes, it'll be engineered properly and
Okay.
graded properly, and
Is there water there too?
there was a small water fountain at the corner of it, so the old water fountain's been removed. We'll be installing a new one as
And
part of the
electrical?
project.
Is there electrical there too?
There's not electric.
And there will not be?
The electric will be, we plan on running conduit to the stable rehabilitation, to
But
the
not
when
to the
stables.
pavilion?
Pardon me?
Not to the pavilion?
Yes,
But there will be?
yes, we're planning to.
But that's will there be lighting there too, or just
The plan
for-
wouldn't be to have lighting for overnight use or anything like that. So it just
Just
will
for
be
events.
for, if there's events that would happen there, or activities and things like that, where they'd be able to use power. It's a request that we get continually from the rentals that happen
And
there.
all sides open, none closed?
Very similar to what was there now, or what was there prior, sorry. Yeah, it'll look very similar. The only difference is that I will go with a metal roof because it'll be easier to maintain, especially given the shade coverage and all of the moisture and everything that collects in that area. That'll give us a better opportunity to be able to clean it and power wash it for long-term preservation.
There are no lights in any of the pavilions in the park, right?
There's a light pack on Clemacrone's, there's a light pack on Emlenton L. A lot of them have a dull light so that when police drive in and drive through, they'll be able to see what's going on. The stable at Fenimore will also have something similar.
Okay.
Nothing that's disturbing in any way. Just more for, again, safety when there's, ride-through checks and things on behalf of police.
Because the standard is still dusk till dawn.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. The only exceptions, obviously, are with our lighted facilities, Radnor Memorial Park and Enki B when it's in use. So the other couple just quick updates, I had a couple slides loaded up here. As I know you guys are aware, the culvert that leads into the channel that funnels water into the creek and also indirectly into the pond with a valve, we had a renovation take place in this area where we have some tree plantings. So we recently have evaluated this area. We know that the fencing that runs all along the border, not only in the area that you see here, but all along the back part of the pond that backs up to the residence, that fencing is very deteriorated. If you were to walk along there, you would see it's broken down and rusted in a lot of different areas. We will be replacing that fence, so that is on the horizon. But before that, I had referenced the last few months that there was a hazardous tree assessment that was done across all of the parks. Fenimore Woods was part of that. We know that there are hazardous trees all along this area that are slated for removal. Some are slated for pruning. So I know we've gotten questions from folks, this goes back to June, actually, this goes back to February, March. Folks have seen the purple stripes on the trees. So there's double purple stripe for trees that are hazardous that are slated to be removed, and then there are singles for those that are to be pruned. So there's a mix of those that are in Fenimore. And Fenimore's one of the parks that we're going to prioritize, obviously because we have the project coming, so we want to make sure that those get addressed. And especially in this area, all along the back part of the pond, where there's the fence, there's broken down trees. That's all going to be cleaned up and rehabilitated with new fencing. I've met with the residents along here. We've had a lot of discussions on fencing, configuration, tree removals, tree plantings, all of that on the horizon. We're going to be working on that probably early in 2025. And then we're also going to be extend the sidewalk here a little further up so that there's an apron basically, so that if our public works or emergency vehicle needed to drive in, they could. But then we'll also install a gate here too, so that you can't just like openly drive right into it. And again, discussions we've had with this homeowner here, so all in progress. In addition to that, so this view is a little further down Shimoni, so the view we were just looking at, if you go down here to the left, you'll see the end of where the culvert is and where the culvert has been repaired. You can see the new brickwork along there. That fence that runs along there is also going to be removed, and our plan is to extend the sidewalk down and then bring the sidewalk into the park. That way you actually have a connection there. I know one of the things we get so much feedback about is just, safe accessibility in and around our park areas, and obviously this falls within line to our greenways and trails plan and our connection network that we're trying to achieve through that with some of those goals. And then hopefully, ultimately, once sidewalks can potentially, be installed along Walnut, I know a lot of it has to do with neighbors and permissions and lots of details there that I know have been under discussion, ultimately just trying to be able to patchwork, those accessible areas where we can, as we can. And then this fence will be replaced with post and rail fence. So the fencing behind, if we jump back to the pond, it will still be chain link fence, and we'll probably do a black powder coat fence that'll be about 4 foot high, so it'll look nice. But this run that will come here of the fencing will be post and rail, and then we'll have a post and rail gate. So it'll have a bit of a rustic look to it. And then I know we talked last month, just really quickly, I know everybody wants to go watch the Eagles, except for me. But we had the vegetative removal from the pond. The pond is still looking great, which is fantastic news. But we know that now, being in such a drought, the water flow is just not coming through the weir like we need it to. So it's very stagnant. It's dry. Obviously not optimal conditions to really evaluate, but we are looking at ways that we can get the water that is flowing up above in the creek, where you don't see, further up Shimoni and on like across the street from where this view is, working to figure out how we can potentially engineer some conveyance. We don't know what the future is going to hold, in terms of droughts and lack of water, but as of right now, there's no water at all getting to the pond or even getting through the weir. It's just a steady, just a stagnant pool of water. So we are evaluating that. We're working with the engineers that actually designed the weir and the channel, or the culvert, and trying to come up with some different solutions to try and, implement something that can get us some water flow. Because it could be likely that any type of maintenance to the pond could be on a far horizon. So if we get to next July, there's a possibility we end up with algae again that builds up. So we would have to evaluate another short-term fix to get someone to come in and skim the pond again. I don't foresee, we'll get to it in a minute, but I don't foresee there will be a funded capital budget for 2025. So I think the next update was really Odoricio. We're waiting for the final, waiting to get a draft plan. So as soon as we get that, we will be here with bells on to look at that and hopefully engage the residents at another meeting at the Radnor Township Civic Association. That'll be something we'll have to look forward to in the coming months. And then just kind of drifting back to the capital budget, we will continue to utilize the money from the grant to afford the master planning that we're putting together for Odoricio. The park survey and topographical development has all been done. All of that has been expended in the grant. I know this board had indicated any future remaining funds in the Park Impact Fund would be allocated towards Odoricio Park. So I know that there will be more that will be needed, obviously, to complement that. If we get to a point where we get an estimation of what the park project is going to cost, that's going to probably have to be either a bond that's evaluated or funded somehow on a future capital plan. So I think that's something I just want to kind of keep the dialogue going about, just as we head into 2025. If we don't have a capital plan that's funded, which isn't likely, we're going to want to have conversations, I think, in the new year on how we get there. And obviously, the the Park Impact Fund will continue as development continues to accrue funding. So if we do have emergency projects that come up throughout the year, we may have to consider utilizing it. I think the balance is somewhere around at least 400,000 at this point. I could be off, but it's somewhere in that general ballpark. I know we've had a lot of big developments recently. So I'll be definitely looking at the board to keep those conversations going, because our capital plan isn't getting any smaller. So I don't know if anyone has any questions on that. Otherwise, I'll move on to Radnor Activity Center. So Radnor Activity Center, as you are aware, we've engaged feasibility for improvements. We're currently in the middle of that. I worked with the contractor to come up with a scope of varying pieces of work that would go into the building for improvements. So for example, there's a few different roof options for replacement. We're looking at 25, 30, 35-year roofs and systems. We know there's exterior envelope masonry work that needs to be done. So all of this has fallen within a detailed scope that now is with a cost estimator. So within the next month, we should have a good idea on what some of these things are going to cost. So taking a look at HVAC replacement, which we know is needed, hazardous materials mitigation, which throughout parts of the building that aren't currently publicly open need to be made. There's a lot of interior cosmetic that has happened as a result of the water intrusion, years of water intrusion that are going to have to be addressed. So I know that's coming down the pike very, very soon. So I'll probably be seeing those numbers within the next couple weeks. Again, just order of magnitude, until we actually put, construction documentation together, we don't know what that will be. And in fact, right now, we have to determine where exactly that funding is going to be coming from. We know that there was a borrowing that occurred for facilities for the Township building and the Public Works building, but how and whether or not Radnor Activity Center is going to be able to be part of that, that still remains to be discussed. So that's coming on the horizon. In the meantime, we continue to operate. The building is in an adaptive nature. It's in a sense of, we have one bathroom at the front of the building that's now being used as a single stall for all gender. So then the back portions of the building where we have the accessible areas, those are closed off. I think most folks have been aware of that because of the water intrusion and because of the building impact that has occurred. So that's unfortunate, especially as we go into our very busy time where we'll have, Saturday the building is in use from 8 a.m. to midnight, all day long with a revolving door of multiple groups. So the gym is open. We are utilizing it. It is daily now, especially with pickleball and groups coming indoors. It's just, using it with one single bathroom isn't an easy thing, but we have increased the cleaning company to come in on a more regular basis and pay attention to the building. And oftentimes our Public Works Department will come in on weekends or what have you if they have to address certain issues that arise. All right, so that just brings us to the trail projects. The only update that I have there is I know that we had approved additional design for the Radnor Trail extension. The board approved that, I believe, in July, if I'm not mistaken. And so survey work is now starting to take place. So this additional design work is for the culvert that would go under Radnor Chester Road, which is, as you can imagine, a significant design work, as well as the soils mitigation for the contaminated soils that were found along parts of the trail that will continue on the eastward extension. I know we kind of went through all those presentations several months ago. I can direct you all to those if you need to see them again. But we do have some invasive clearing that's taken place along the trail. So for anybody who's been over on the trail, they will see that occurring. There are some invasives that are being manually cut It doesn't include any natives, it doesn't include any tree removals. It's just some brush clearing that they have to get into in order to perform the survey work they need to understand the topographical detail in order to start putting the plans together for the trail extension. So if you have any questions on that, please let me know. And then I know that brings us to the TAP trail. So I'm happy to kind of get into that if you'd like me to. I didn't know if you had anything to say on that. Andy? Yes,
The best trail to nowhere.
the
on-
trail to nowhere.
No, I mean, other than I don't think there's been any change to it. And no, unfortunately, it doesn't seem like there's any funds for anything that Radnor can do. I know Commissioner Mulroney mentioned that she would be working with her counterpart to see if there was something that could be done. I think that was over the summer. I'm not sure if she's had any progress on that front at all or not.
I'm not aware of any progress. I know that, with the township getting involved with the project, it's not a Boy Scout bridge.
Right.
It's a very extensive project with a lot of engineering, a lot of permitting, and a significant cost. So I know, and it's also a project that's not directly in Radnor Township, so there were some thoughts that maybe it could be shared with Haverford. So I think, future dialogue is definitely going to be needed. I'm not sure if there is an alternative to how the crossing, over the Ithan stream can occur.
And the reality, if it did, unless there's something done on the Haverford portion of it.
Is there any benefit to Haverford Township at all to contribute money? Why would they contribute anything to it?
Well, it might increase people who come to the CREC, because I think you could get to that site where the recreation center is. So there is a possibility there.
It definitely has value there. It just makes a greater trail.
It's not a high priority of theirs. They've made that clear. And that's sort of one of the problems when the TAP trail was put in. Apparently, they were not put on notice that it was going to be done or any coordination was done whatsoever. So that's one of the issues that I think is sort of with it is, we can sit there and stamp our feet and say, hey, you guys ought to do it, but we're not their constituents.
Gotcha.
So, as far as next steps, I would just continue to keep the dialogue open. It is a project within the capital plan. I did allocate it within there, so at least there's visibility. I know I do have probably quarterly discussions with the Director of Parks and Recreation for Haverford, so I could certainly keep in his ear about it. But it does seem like it would be beneficial, especially since that area of the township doesn't have access to the Radnor Trail. There are a lot of neighborhoods and a lot of folks, I think, that could benefit from it. And maybe there's some other development or opportunities in the area that can allow for the funding to get it done.
Yeah, I was on it earlier this week. There hasn't been any additional vandalism or anything over there in the recent months, which is good.
Good
So-
news. Good to hear. So the other update I wanted to give was on I'll be brief. The comprehensive plan was reviewed at the Board of Commissioners meeting on Monday night. So there's 3 sections at 3 different meetings that are being reviewed in terms of their concern, the concerns, the desires, the strategies, the actions. If you're interested in watching it, or if you have watched it, as you'll see, there's a lot that's geared towards Parks and Recreation, a lot of impacts on the future of Parks and Recreation, on facilities, sustainability, environmental. There's a lot of things that were discussed in terms of investment into a capital plan, which we hope in 2025 becomes a springboard to start to really look at the capital plan. We have this hodgepodge of projects that are in there, maybe start to prioritize what those look like and where those will be located. I know there's a lot of desire for tree care, invasive care. So there's a lot of that. I think that'll garner a lot of discussion as we move forward. I know that one of the other things that came up was the updating of the Parks and Rec open space plan. The last time we had a master plan was in 1991. It's been a document, I think, that has really just sat on the shelf since then. Not that we haven't accomplished anything, we've accomplished a lot of things, but there also were a lot of new properties that happened in the 2000s, of course, that I think put some, replacement improvements on the shelf. But we were very fortunate in 2016 to get the bond to allow for a lot of improvements to parks like Clemacrone, Beauconnor, et cetera. So that'll be something that'll be on our horizon as well, just to kind of have in the back of your minds. And the last item, well, so first of all, the QR code is here because if you want to jump on there and save the link, and I can send it if you need it, is to provide comments. They're still looking for a lot of comments and details that'll go into the final plan. And again, this is being presented to the commissioners in small chunks. So the next two meetings, which will be November 25th and December 9th, they'll see the next two segments of the plan. And then ultimately, a final draft of the plan will be given to the board in the new year for adoption. So the last thing I had on the agenda was just the parks and facilities. I gave each of you a copy of the steward list. I know that I don't think Ms. Fulton is actually on there, so we probably want to maybe go back through and evaluate the parks and the stewards of each of the parks. I don't know if anybody wants to forfeit some parks, or there's some parks you have interest in or sharing, with a goal to try to get into those parks, take a look around, see things that maybe need work or new ideas that can then be brought back to the board and shared with everyone. Or if there are immediate issues that need to be addressed, obviously those things that you can make me aware of more quickly. So this was the draft that we had before Jenna had joined us. So that's totally up to you if you want to do it now or if you guys want to do it by email later. I'm a Steelers fan, so I can talk all night.
Wait a minute. Everybody else is.
I think I would propose we do it by email. Any
Okay.
parks that would want to be shared or offloaded.
Let us know which ones you're interested in, I guess. Yeah. Okay.
And if at any point anyone is interested in talking more specifically about a specific site, if it's, Radnor Activity Center or the skate park or just anything, I can be available for that as well.
I will call upon you. I haven't been to any of these. Any of my people. I mean, I don't even, well, I won't show my ignorance, but I haven't been to too many of these.
The Radnor Activity Center, they're really, I know there was some question in the past about their interest in the upkeep of the building. But with all the activities now, that's not even an issue anymore, I hope.
I'm sorry, with
The Radnor Activity Center.
keeping the building?
Yeah.
I think the issue of keeping the building was more of keeping the maintenance and the investment. I think that's where the questions started to arise, because it's a facility that we lease from the school district.
Right.
And recognizing that there's a significant amount of money that has to go into the facility, which we're going to soon learn just how much and what that looks like. But we do have a lease, and we do have obligations within the lease. To what degree they are dictated by the exact improvements, I'll let the lawyers sort that out if it comes to that.
Right.
But I think that as far as an asset for the community, I mean, it's used a lot.
I was questioning with all the activities that go on there now, and they can definitely see how the community uses that place. And you said basically from 8 to 12 midnight. Wow.
Especially in the winter, it's
Yeah.
used very, very heavily. So there's no doubt that there's a valuable community asset that we want to preserve, especially if there's not an alternative.
Okay. That was my only question. If there's anything else, any questions, comments? If not, we want to adjourn. Do I make a motion that
I second that.
has been motioned and seconded? We are adjourned. There we go.